Oh yeah, sexy biscuits. Nice.
Hello YouTube, I am the Gaming Pegasus 187 and welcome back to another review after I don't know how many months. Yeah, I've just been doing the side-scroller Sunday thing. So, going through my history with gaming, I had very vague memories with the Atari 2600. Vague as in I couldn't tell you which games I had played. Yeah, I could have been playing Combat, I could have been playing Yar's Revenge. I just pray to God I wasn't playing E.T. Hell, I could have been playing the Sword Quest games, who fucking knows? I had a few memories with the Sega Master System, mostly playing Outrun when I was sick, and of course playing the Super Mario Bros. With the system, Alex Kidd in Miracle World. Although that game wasn't as good. And of course, Alex Kidd never became Sega's mascot. Yeah, Sega tried to make Alex Kidd their mascot back in the 80s. 90s came along, Sonic came along. Yeah, Alex Kidd was just regulated to being another racer in the All-Stars racing games. But of course, I had many, many memories playing the NES. In fact, I still have my old top loader back here and the gray box. So of course, I grew up playing games like Super Mario Brothers, Mario Brothers 2, of course my favorite game of all time, Mario 3. But I never had a Sega Genesis or a Super Nintendo growing up. I did have some memories playing with friends, but I never owned them. So I missed out on the whole 16-bit era, and I gotta miss out on so many classic games. I missed out on classic RPGs like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy III. Or 6, as it is in Japan. Yeah, that could be a whole video in and of itself I could bring up. But I'm getting sidetracked. Of course, I missed out on classics like A Link to the Past, Rocket Knight Adventures, arcade ports like Sunset Riders, games like Turtles in Time. I missed out on so many great games. Another series I had missed out on as I was growing up, and I've only really discovered in recent years, is the Castlevania series. And it's, how shall we say, hard as balls difficulty. Take something like the Japanese Mario 2 here. That kind of insanity. Stiff weapon controls, getting knocked back into pits when you're hit, Medusa heads and their wavy blind patterns, throw those in a room with bats and then knights that take up the 9 hits to kill. Yeah, the games are pretty frustrating. But they're good games. So the game I'm reviewing today is arguably the best 2D Castlevania game. And no, we didn't get Rondo of Blood until the PSP remake. And no, I don't count Dracula X either. That was more of a weird hybrid sequel thing. It's a pretty rare game too. It's good, it's just not this game good. And no, I don't count Symphony of the Night either. First of all, that was PlayStation, and 2, that was completely different than any Castlevania game before. So the game I'm reviewing is actually one of the few games I have complete on the Super Nintendo. In fact, one of the few games I have complete from that 8 and 16-bit era to begin with. This is Super Castlevania 4. Super Castlevania 4 was released on Halloween of 1991 in Japan, December of 91 in North America, and in November of 92 in Europe. It would later be ported to the Wii Virtual Console in December of 2006. Japan on the 2nd, North America on Christmas Day, and on the 29th in Europe. And last year, on September 11th of 2013, it was released on the Wii U Virtual Console in Japan, and on Halloween of that same year in North America. You take control of Simon Belmont on his quest to rid the world of Dracula, and to do that you have to use Simon's whip, the Vampire Killer. Fittingly named, by the way. Actually, I think it's called a long flail in the manual, but it's just much cooler to declare it the Vampire Killer. Now if only he would use it on that sparkly vampire from Twilight. You will also use the various sub-weapons to make your way through the castle, fighting all kinds of skeletons, Medusa heads, knights, etc. On top of some insane bosses to get to the Vampire Lord himself. Like a lot of games on the system, especially early on, it utilized Mode 7 as an added effect, with gimmicks like this, like the 3D on the 3DS, or motion controls on the Wii. Sometimes they feel tacked on, forced, really shoehorned in there. Not here. It's another one of those things that just adds to the uniqueness of each stage. It is one of the most atmospheric games on the system. Dark, creepy, brooding, with matching music to boot. Partly because of the superior sound chip in the SNES, and partly because, and I'm probably butchering these names here, Masanori Adachi and Taro Kudo did an amazing job composing the soundtrack. It was even released commercially. That's how good it is. Now the gameplay and level design. Earlier Castlevania games and the later 2D games suffered from very stiff control. A pretty fatal flaw in my opinion. It really added to the difficulty of the games. One-way whip attacks, the knockback backwards fall bullshit. Very frustrating gameplay elements. But here in Super Castlevania 4, you can whip in all 8 directions, which is a lightsaber when enemies attack you from all sides. And do you see why a lot of the other Castlevania games are notoriously difficult? Combine the one-way whip attack with the backwards fall bullshit, and you have enemies that come at you from all sides, you're gonna die a lot. Now this game is hard, don't get me wrong. But a lot of other games have the same backwards fall bullshit, like Ninja Gaiden. This game isn't as punishing as some of the other ones. But it's still difficult. But it's based more on a fair challenge as opposed to a cheap death. Most of the time. Like any Castlevania game, your sub-weapons are essential, from your axe to your knife to your time stopper. No, actually, it kind of is the same thing for Mega Man 2. It's a stopwatch, it stops everything on screen. Yeah. So stock up on those hearts, because in later stages you will need them. Speaking of stages, the opening stages are not that hard, just really kind of a basic, I guess you can call it a tutorial to really get used to the game and the different controls and gameplay mechanics. But as the game progresses on, the platforming gets trickier, the platforms get smaller, enemies get tougher, and death traps get even more devious. Like a insta-death saw coming up from the bottom of the screen trying to kill you. This forces you to remember each level's layout and master every move in your arsenal. Fortunately, outside of mastering the levels and controls, you get some pretty huge breaks. Unlimited continues in a password system. Before game saves of today, you had passwords. Sometimes there was games that had battery backup. Most games of the era, Battletoads, Sunset Riders, Double Dragon 2, etc., you get a limited number of continues. Not here, though. You can start at the level you left off on. Say you die on 8-2 and you lose all your lives. You start back at 8-1. No need to start at the beginning of the game. But if you get up to a boss and you die, you're going to have to replay the same stage right before the boss. You don't continue at the boss. What does it continue? A miserable little pile of secrets! Overall, Super Castlevania 4 is one of the best games of the 16-bit era. Atmospheric, well-made, and challenging.
Flawless victory.
It's been released on both the Wii and Wii U Virtual Consoles, as I've said before. Now, I do happen to own a complete copy of the game. I only paid about $48 for it about 3 years ago. And with how games are now, that's a pretty damn good deal. Now, Card only today will run you anywhere from about $32 to $48, but complete upwards of $70 to $95. But to download on the Wii U Virtual Console, it is only $8. So that's definitely a cheaper option if you want to go that route and not spend top dollar on a physical copy. But if you do want the physical copy and you're not as much of a hardcore collector, honestly, paying about $35 for this game is still well worth the money. As I said, this is one of the best games of the era. Pegasus, out.